Namaste. In this video, we will be covering how to construct 60 and 120 degree angles using a compass. So what is a compass? This is a drawing tool used to create circles and arcs. It's very important that you know how to properly hold your compass before watching the rest of this video. Below, we see a diagram that labels the parts: the point, the legs, the pencil, the hinge, and the handle. It's not very important that you familiarize yourselves with these terms. However, I will be using a few throughout this video. Let's start off by constructing a 60-degree angle. I highly encourage all of you to follow along using a paper, pencil, ruler, and compass. So the first step is to construct a straight line using your ruler. That looks something like this. Let's call this line AB, with A being over here and B being right over here. Now that we have constructed line AB, move the tip of the compass to point A. So it should look something like this. Before you construct your first arc, be sure that this angle stays the same throughout the process. In other words, it should not become greater or less than it currently is. With that in mind, we need to construct a semicircle that moves counterclockwise about the starting position. So, in other words, it should look something like this, where the arc that we form is approximately 180 degrees. The next step is to move the compass to the intersection between the semicircle and line AB. So that would look something like this, where the tip of the compass is on the intersection point and the pencil is positioned to fall right on the line. And throughout this process, make sure not to change the angle that the two legs of the compass form. So now reposition the compass so that the pencil stops right before the semicircle. So in other words, we need to move the compass counterclockwise in this direction and make sure not to construct any arc. From this point, we now need to construct a new arc, and this arc is going to be a very small one. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's see. Using my drawing feature, I now move the compass counterclockwise about its starting position to get something that looks like this. And we're almost done. This intersection point between the arc I just drew and the semicircle will form a 60-degree angle once I construct it. So how do I do so? Well, all that's left to do is to draw a straight line going through point A and that intersection point. So at the end, it should look something like this. And there we have it. We've constructed a 60-degree angle. So now, let's construct a 120-degree angle. Before I start, note that 120 is equal to 60 plus 60. Why is this important? Well, in the previous problem, we constructed a 60-degree angle. To construct a 120-degree angle, all we're doing is making two 60-degree arcs. Remember that the first step is to draw a straight line like this, and we'll label it as AB. Then reposition the compass so that the tip falls on point A, and throughout this process, make sure that this angle measure does not change. So from point A, draw a semicircle by moving the compass in the counterclockwise direction, just like this. So we're almost done. Now, we need to move the compass back to its initial starting position and reposition it so that the tip falls on the intersection between the semicircle and the line, just like that. And remember, from here, we moved the compass counterclockwise without drawing anything, just like this. And now that we're close to the arc, we need to construct a small arc by moving the pencil in the counterclockwise direction. The next step is to move the tip of the compass to the intersection between the semicircle and the arc you just drew to get something that looks like this. And make sure that, once again, this angle does not change throughout this entire process. All that's left to do is to draw a small arc from this position that intersects the semicircle to look something like this. And there we have it. We've constructed the outline for a 120-degree angle. And finally, we know that this intersection point and point A are going to form the 120-degree angle to look something like this. For practice, I encourage all of you to redraw the 60 and 120-degree angles from memory. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.